Hello, I am Flash Isaac, and you are welcome to Flash Learners. Today, I'll be taking you through NECO likely questions with detailed solution. Now, to get the best out of this class, I recommend the Flash Learners WAEC application because NECO generally don't prepare you for exams, and NECO uses the WAEC standard to set questions. If you get the app on your phone or on your laptop, it will be very easy for you to study. You have solutions to questions there as well. Then to learn physics and other subjects, I recommend that you check out Flash Learners because you will see all your subjects and topics treated video per video. With that, I promise you are going to do very well in your examination. The first question here says, in a collision between two objects, kinetic energy is conserved only if. When is kinetic energy conserved in collision? Now, when two bodies come in contact, there is collision. If this is one ball, this is another ball. So when they come in contact like this, they've collided, there is collision. Now in collision, a lot of things can happen. Two bodies can collide and remain there. Two bodies can collide, then one of them will start pushing the other and they begin to move with common velocity. This one before collision has its own velocity. This one before collision has its own velocity. But after collision, they begin to move with common velocity. Or two bodies can come in contact, they collide, each of them will still bounce back, which means they retain their kinetic energy. In collision, two terms are important: momentum and kinetic energy. Momentum is the product of a body's mass and velocity. So momentum is mass times velocity. If this is a body of mass 2 kg, if this body is moving with a velocity of 20 meters per second, this simply means that the momentum will be 40. Then what is the unit? Mass is in kilogram, velocity is in meter per second, so kilogram meter per second. Now if you have another body with mass 200 kg and velocity, let's say just 2 meters per second, you notice that the momentum will be 200 kilograms times 2, which is 400 kilogram meter per second. Take note, look at something. This one is not moving very fast, but look at the momentum. It's even bigger than this one that is very fast. So momentum depends on mass and velocity. If you have big mass or large mass, you need not move too fast to cause much damage. This is why a trailer moving slowly, if it hits this wall, it will cause more damage than small car moving very fast. So momentum is mass times velocity. While kinetic energy is the energy a body possesses due to motion. It is half mv squared. When you are moving, the energy you possess is kinetic energy. Then when you are at a height or due to position, you possess potential energy, which is mgh. Now when two bodies collide and they bounce back, they bounce back with their same velocity, we say that the collision is elastic because there is no loss in kinetic energy. In fact, momentum is conserved. It's not destroyed, the mass remains, it retains its velocity. Let's go back to the question. In a collision between two objects, kinetic energy is conserved only if the collision is elastic. Elastic collision is simply in collision where both momentum and kinetic energy is conserved. Both bodies bounce back, they retain their speed and mass after collision. They are not destroyed, they don't stick together. So in that type of collision, we say that kinetic energy is conserved. So where is kinetic energy conserved? In elastic collision. In inelastic collision, where the body is gone without moving or they stick, kinetic energy is obviously not conserved. The next question says, the quantity of motion of a body is dash. Is it acceleration? Acceleration is simply the change in velocity of a body with time. Is it displacement? Displacement is simply distance covered in a specified direction. If I am here, I move to this place, I move to this place, I move to this place. Since I am here now, my displacement is simply from here to here. Where I started and where I am now. Displacement is different from distance because distance refers to the total ground covered by an object. If you are calculating distance for this motion, the distance will simply be from here to here, plus from here to here, plus from here to here. Then position is the point an object is at a particular time. The location of an object at a specific time. That is your position. Then look at this. Momentum. I said momentum is the mass times velocity. Then velocity is simply displacement with time. So displacement of the body over time, that is the velocity of a body. Now the quantity of motion of a body is its momentum. The volume of a given mass of gas is inversely proportional to its pressure. Volume is inversely proportional to pressure on one condition: keep temperature constant. So this is Boyle's law. At constant temperature, the volume of a gas or of a given mass of gas is inversely proportional to its pressure. Meaning, as the pressure increases, the volume has to drop. And as the volume increases, the pressure has to drop. But Charles says that the volume of a given mass of gas is directly proportional to its absolute temperature, provided pressure is constant. So Boyce says that we should keep temperature constant, but Charles says we should keep pressure constant. Now, here we don't solve with proportionality sign. In mathematics variation or in physics, to convert proportionality sign to equality sign, you introduce a constant, and this is the same thing as equals A, which means Boyce says V is equals K over P. If V is equals K over P, it simply means that according to Boyle's law, volume times pressure is equals constant, or pressure times volume is equals constant. If you are given change in pressure or change in volume, it simply means P1 V1 is equals constant, P2 V2 is equals constant. Therefore, P1 V1 is equals P2 V2. So you can use this formula in Boyle's law to solve any question. If V1 is missing, you simply make V1 subject formula, substitute others. If P2 is missing, make P2 subject formula, substitute the other values. Then if you are solving under Charles' law, this is what you do. V is equals K. No, this is volume proportional to temperature. Sorry. So V is equals KT. Therefore, V over temperature is equals constant. V1 over T1 is equals V2 over T2. So this is equation for solving Charles' law. Then, general gas law is a combination of Boyle's law and Charles' law. P1 V1 over T1 is equals P2 V2 over T2. Ideal gas law is simply Pn is equals nRT. Ideal gas law tries to explain the behavior of perfect gas. Now take note that ideal gases do not exist. They are just in the imaginary of scientists. So gases that don't exist, many of us pay more attention to them, whereas we leave real gases. In fact, most time, real gases, they don't even obey gas laws. Yeah, they don't follow gas law. So this gas law you are studying and enjoying, many of them, they don't really apply to real gases. And the next question here says, how would the capacitance of a parallel plate capacitor be affected if the distance of separation of its plates is increased? It will dash. When the distance of separation of the plate of capacitors is increased, what happens? The capacitance of a capacitor is equals EA over D, EA over D, and the factors that affect capacitance are the nature of the dielectric material, the area, you see, area of separation of the plate, the distance between the plates. Now, the relationship between capacitance and distance is an inverse relationship. Capacitance is inversely proportional to distance, which means as the distance of separation is increased, the capacitance will have to reduce, and as the distance is reduced, the capacitance will have to increase. Now, back to the question. How would the capacitance of a parallel plate capacitor be affected if the distance of separation of its plate is decreased? It will increase in value because as distance reduces, capacitance has to increase. That is inverse relationship. Which of the following waves require a material medium for its propagation? Radio waves, light waves, and X-rays are electromagnetic waves. They do not require material medium. Meanwhile, sound wave or water waves, they are mechanical waves. They will require material medium for propagation. So option C is correct. Then, the material used to slow down the neutrons in a nuclear reactor is dash. This is under radioactivity. Radioactivity is the spontaneous disintegration of a nucleus to emit radiation. Now, radioactivity is a nuclear reaction, which means it takes place in the nucleus. Remember, matter is anything that has mass and occupies space. Mass is the quantity of matter a body possesses. It is different from weight. Weight is the earth pull on a body. When gravity acts on mass, it will have weight. So if you are given a mass of 2 kg, as you begin to raise this mass up, gravity acts on it. Let's say times 10 meters per second square. This becomes 20 Newton. And mass of a body or weight acts downward because gravity tends to pull you down. As you try to go up, weight acts opposite to bring you down. So gravity is simply a force that brings all objects down. Anything that goes up will surely come down. And from Newton's first law, a body at rest will continue to be at rest. And if the body is in motion, it will continue to move without uniform motion in a straight line unless it is acted by a force, which means force causes motion. And that law is referred to as the law of inertia. Newton's first law is referred to as the law of inertia, which means when you are at rest, you won't want to move. When you are already moving, you will not have to stop unless force stops you. So force causes motion, force causes objects to stop moving. While from the second law of motion, it states that the rate of change of momentum of a body is proportional to the force applied and takes place in direction of the force. Remember, we said that the quantity of motion of a body is momentum, and I explained momentum in collision. So Newton's second law is still taking us back to momentum. If momentum is mass times velocity, change in momentum will simply be mass times final velocity minus mass times initial velocity. If you attended primary school, you know that you can factorize this to have mass v minus u. Since we are talking about one object, the mass remains constant. This is change in momentum. If change in momentum is proportional to the force applied, it simply means force is equals rate of change in momentum over time. Now, from equations of motion, you know that v is equals u plus at. If v is equals u plus at, v minus u is equals at. True or true? True. When you divide here by t and you divide here by t, you have that v minus u over t is equals a. So v minus u over t is a, which means force is equals ma. This is how we derive force to be mass times acceleration, and that is from Newton's second law. The Newton's third law applies to rocket propulsion, shooting, and all those things, because it says for every action there is an equal or opposite reaction, which means if you shoot a gun, the gun will push you back with that same reaction. When you hit this place, the pain you feel is equivalent to the force you use in hitting it. So that is action and reaction. They are equal and they are opposite. Now, from matter, I've gone to Newton's law, to gravity, to weight, and to mass. This is where I'm arriving at. Matter can simply be elements, compound, and mixture. Elements are pure substances, and the first 20 elements are hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon, sodium, magnesium, aluminium, silicon, phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine, argon, potassium, and calcium. The compounds, they contain two or more elements combined chemically. They cannot be separated by an ordinary means. You can't separate compounds. Example of compound: sodium chloride, common salt, calcium hydroxide, calcium oxide, quicklime, calcium carbonate, and so on. H2SO4, hydrogen tetraoxosulfuric acid. These are compounds. They contain different elements combined chemically. The mixtures, they contain two or more elements or substances combined physically, which means mixtures can be separated. If you have a mixture of sand and water, you can filter out the water, then you dry the sand, you've separated. In petroleum, you can separate crude oil using fractional distillation because they have close boiling point. Now, matter can be atoms, molecules, and ions. This is where I am arriving at. Atom is the smallest particle of a substance that can take part in chemical reaction, while molecule is the smallest part of a substance that is capable of independent existence. It will exist on its own and still retain the property of that substance. While ions are atoms or group of atoms that possess charge. When an element gives out electron, it becomes an ion. Then in that case, it is positive ion. Let's say this is hydrogen. When hydrogen gives out one electron, it becomes hydrogen ion. And hydrogen has only one electron. It gives out the only electron it has, which means hydrogen ion has only proton. This is why we can refer to hydrogen ion as proton. This is why acids are proton donor, hydrogen ion donor. So if this is chlorine, this is an atom. When chlorine gains one electron, it becomes Cl-, that is chlorine ion. So that is ion for you. While radicals are a group of atoms that have single charge. If you have SO2, let's say 2-, this one, they have common charge, which is 2- to the two compound, not just for one. That is radical. Now, atom has subatomic particles. Remember, that is stated that atoms can neither be created nor destroyed. But we found out that atoms can be broken down to electron, proton, and neutron. Now, you can take atom to be like this. Inside of the atom, we call it the nucleus. In the nucleus, you have the proton and you have the neutron. The electron is in the outermost shell. Electron. Electron is positively charged. No, electron is negatively charged. Proton is positively charged, and neutron has no charge. Atom gets stable because the mass of the proton and electron, or the charge of the proton and electron, they cancel out, making atom to be electrically neutral. Look at something. In the nucleus, you have proton and neutron, which means nuclear reaction is simply a reaction having to do with just proton and neutron. And that is what radioactivity is about. Because in chemical reaction, they deal with electrons. They say, okay, this one accepts electron, this one gives out electron. That is the principle of chemical reaction. But in nuclear reaction, we deal with proton and we deal with neutron. Now, radioactivity is the spontaneous disintegration of the nucleus. This nucleus steadily breaks down to form other particles. When you have elements like thorium, uranium, polonium, these guys, they are unstable, they are massive. You see elements with mass of as big as 248, atomic number as high as 91 or above. They will be unstable. So they disintegrate to form other particles. When they disintegrate on their own, we call that natural radioactivity. While steady elements can be bombarded so that they become unstable and break down. In that case, it is artificial radioactivity. Now, in radioactivity, when this nucleus disintegrates to form other particles, we have three particles that can be formed, or three major radiation. They are alpha particles, beta particles, and gamma rays. These are rays. So this is alpha particle, beta particle, and gamma rays. Gamma rays, they have the highest penetrating power. They can only be stopped by a thick lead block. Then beta particles, they have the next high penetrating power. They can be stopped by aluminium foil. The alpha particles, they can be stopped by a paper. They don't have much penetrating power. The alpha particle is simply a helium nucleus, 4 mass, 2 atomic number. When a radioactive substance emits alpha radiation, the mass will drop by 4 and the atomic number will drop by 2. Then beta ray is simply a fast moving electron. When an atom emits a beta radiation, the mass of the atom remains the same, but the atomic number will increase by 1. While gamma rays are just rays, the atomic mass and numbers are not affected. So, in a nuclear reaction, we have nuclear fusion and nuclear fusion. In fission, in fusion, smaller nucleus, they come together to form a heavy one, and energy is released. In radiation generally, energy is also released. Smaller nucleus, they come together to form a heavier nucleus of higher mass than the individual reactants. We say that they are fused together. In fusion, the application is sun. Energy from the sun is gotten from nuclear fusion, but it touches us via radiation. Now, fission is when a heavy nucleus breaks down to form smaller ones. Now, in fission, it can lead to chain reaction, where one fission leads to another. When you bombard a nucleus with neutrons or other materials, they begin to break down. One fission leads to another. After that fission, it further breaks down again, form neutrons. Another fission, the neutrons produced, they bombard the element to form more fission. So it begins to break down, break down, break down, break down. So one fission leads to another. In that case, we say that it is a nuclear chain reaction. Chain reaction is the result where one reaction or one fission leads to another. So that chain reaction, it needs to be controlled so that it doesn't get out of hand. Reaction keeps going on and going on. It doesn't stop. One leads to another. One leads to another. Now, to slow down reaction, or we use nuclear reactors to slow down neutrons. Now, the things you can use to slow down neutrons, you can use graphite, you can use boron rod or cadmium. Those are moderators. I just give examples of moderators. So out of this, graphite is the only moderator that is listed here. In fact, heavy water can be used as moderator, deuterium oxide. So I've used this question to touch a whole lot of things in radioactivity. And the next one says, an electric device has 20 turns in the primary coil and 20 turns in the secondary. An electric device has 50 turns in the primary coil and 20 turns in the secondary coil. The device can be dashed. Its number of turns in primary is equals 50. Number of turns in secondary is equals 20. This is simply a transformer. transformer has primary and secondary tones. And transformer is a device which can be used to step up or step down voltage at the same frequency. When transformer steps up or step down voltage, the frequency doesn't change. It remains the same. Now, a transformer used to step up voltage is referred to as step up transformer. And the one used to step down voltage is referred to as step down transformer. Now, when the number of turns in the secondary, because this is like something like this, you see transformer like this, a separation, you see coils, all those winding. Even in electronic devices, when you open them, you see some things, all those small, you call them transformer, they are wrapped. Even the one you see on your street, they have secondary and they have primary. So, voltage and number of turns, they are in primary, and voltage and number of turns, they are in secondary. Transformers are used for different purposes. Now, remember that electricity is generated at low voltage. Then at the down, then it has to be stepped up during transmission. Now that step up is done via step up transformer. And take note that electricity is transmitted at high voltage and low current. This is to minimize heat loss because current causes a lot of heat, I square R, heating effect of current. Now, for a step up transformer, the number of turns in the secondary must be bigger than the number of turns in primary. For a step down transformer, the number of turns in the primary must be bigger than the number of turns in secondary. In this transformer, we have 50 turns in the primary and 20 turns in the secondary, which means it is step down transformer. The secondary turns is lesser than primary turns. Now look at the idea. This is the voltage in the secondary. Voltage in secondary is inversely proportional to number of turns in the primary. So as the number of turns in the primary increase, the voltage in the secondary will reduce. As the number of turns in the secondary increase, the voltage will increase, as you can see. So which means voltage in the secondary depends on the number of turns in secondary to be big and the number of turns in the primary to be small. That is D for you. So for a step down transformer, the number of turns in secondary must be lesser than the number of turns in primary. For a step up transformer, secondary turns should be more than primary turns. This transformer is a step down transformer. Then the earpiece of a telephone handset converts energy from electrical energy to sound energy. Speakers, electrical energy to sound energy as well. Then mic converts sound energy to electrical energy. Speakers, electrical energy to sound energy. Pressing iron, electrical energy to heat energy. So these are transducers, energy converters. Then generators, they convert mechanical energy to electrical energy. While electrical motors, they convert electrical energy to mechanical energy. Uranium disintegrated to form thorium by emitting dash. Uranium mass 234 disintegrated to give thorium 230 atomic number. Look at something. In this case, you need not know the formula for uranium or thorium. You can represent them with anything. They say this uranium disintegrates to form thorium. What has happened? Radioactivity. Radioactivity is the spontaneous disintegration of the nuclei of an element to emit radiation. Natural radioactivity is when heavy nucleus like thorium, they are so heavy, they are unstable. So they break down to form smaller nucleus or more stable nucleus or nuclei. That is natural radioactivity. Then in artificial radioactivity, you can bombard stable elements so that they become unstable and emit radiation. What are the radiations emitted in radioactivity? They are alpha radiation, beta radiation, and gamma rays. Gamma rays, these are the major radiations. The major radiations in radioactivity are alpha particles, beta particles, and gamma rays. What are alpha particles? Alpha particles are simply helium nucleus. They have mass of 4 and atomic number of 2. Beta particles are simply fast-moving electrons. Electrons, they have mass of 0 and atomic number of -1. Gamma rays, they are just radiation, they are rays. When it comes to penetrating power, gamma rays, they have the highest penetrating power. They can only be stopped by lead blocks. Then the next in line in terms of penetration power is beta rays. Beta rays, they can be stopped by aluminium foil. Meanwhile, alpha particles, they have the least penetrating power. They can be stopped by a tin paper. They say uranium emits radiation. So it disintegrated from this to that. They did not give us info about the atomic number. We don't care. But let's see the mass number. The mass number changed from 234 to 230. How many mass is lost? 234 to 230. What happened? 234 minus 230 is 4, which means the mass has reduced by 4. And I told you that for a mass to reduce by 4, it means alpha rays has been emitted, because in alpha particle it has mass of 4. Since they didn't mention atomic number, let's leave all of them blank. Which means this is 234, this is 230 plus 4 equals 234. Balancing of equation obeys the law of conservation of mass. The total mass before reaction is the same as the total mass after reaction. Therefore, uranium emits alpha particles to give us thorium. That is option A as the correct option. And the next one says, which of the following particles may be emitted in a process of natural radioactivity? Like I said, in natural radioactivities, alpha rays. This is alpha particle. This is beta, and this is gamma rays. So alpha particles, beta particles, and gamma rays are the radiations or particles that are emitted during radioactivity. Option A says alpha particles and beta particles. Is that correct? Yes. Option B says alpha particles and X-rays. Is that correct? No. X-rays are not emitted during natural radioactivity. Option C says beta particles and X-rays. Option D says gamma rays and X-rays. Option A is the most appropriate option. And look at this question. The equivalent capacitance of a 3 microfarad capacitor and a 6 microfarad capacitor connected in parallel is dash. We are given two capacitors. One of them is 3 microfarad and the other capacitor is 6 microfarad. And we are told that these capacitors are connected in parallel. When capacitors are connected in parallel, what happens? In parallel arrangement of capacitors, they add up like series resistor. If I give you two capacitors like this and I say arrange them in parallel, the first thing you ask yourself is, are they both in the same unit? In this case, yes, this is a microfarad, this is a microfarad. So the equivalent capacitance or the total capacitance is equals C1 plus C2, which means the first capacitor 3 microfarad plus the second one 6 microfarad. That will give you 9 microfarad. So the equivalent capacitance is 9 microfarad. What if they have said or they had said in series? This is in parallel. If they had asked us to connect these capacitors in series, we will simply say the total capacity 1 over the total capacitance is equals 1/3 plus 1/6. This would have been the formula. So 1 over total capacitance or equivalent capacitance would have been, the LCM is 6. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2 plus 6 divided by 6 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. That is 3/6. That should give you 1/2. 1/2 is not the answer. It is 1 over the total capacitance, that is 1/2. If 1 over total capacitance is 1/2, when you cross multiply, the total capacitance would have been 2. Which means in series, 6 microfarad and 3 microfarad will give you 2 microfarad. But in parallel, they will give you 9 microfarads. This is where the arrangement of resistors and capacitors differ. If you were arranging capacitor, if these were resistors and you are arranging them in parallel, you will do like this. And if these were resistors and you are arranging them in series, you will do them this way. So arrangement of capacitors in parallel is the same as arrangement of resistors in series. Arrangement of capacitors in series is the same as arrangement of resistors in parallel. They are vice versa. This one says, which of the following units is equivalent to watts? Which of the following units is equivalent to watts? Option A says kilogram per meter square. Option B says kilogram meter square per second cube. Option C says kilogram meter square per second square. We have fundamental quantities and we have derived quantities. Fundamental quantities are quantities that are independent of other quantities. They don't depend on other quantities. And the main fundamental quantities are length, mass, and time. You can add amount of substance, candela, temperature, and so on. But the top three are length, mass, and time. They have their dimension. The dimension for time is T. The dimension for length is L. And the dimension for mass is M. Look at something. Power. What is power? Power is simply work done over time. If you are able to do work in shorter time, we simply say you have power. Power is time rate of doing work. No, power is rate of doing work better. What is work done? Work done is simply force times distance, which means power is force times distance over time. What is force? Force is mass times acceleration. So force is simply ma, then times s, mas over t. This is power. Power can also be mgh over t, where g equals a when you are doing a vertical motion and distance is equals height for vertical motion or motion under gravity. What is mass? The unit of mass is kilogram times what is acceleration? Acceleration is meter per second square. And what is time? Time is seconds over, sorry, this is distance. Distance is meter over time is seconds. Power simply becomes kilogram meter square per second cube, because this second goes up to add another seconds to this one. Meter plus meter is meter square, which means the unit of power is also kilogram meter square per second cube, as seen in option B. Which of the following units is equivalent to the watt? It is simply kilogram meter squared per second cube. And the next question says, an aluminium foil nucleon is placed across a beam of radiation from a radioactive source. Which of the following types of radiation will be stopped by it? Beta particles can stop aluminium foil. Meanwhile, gamma rays will penetrate aluminium foil. So beta particles can only be stopped by aluminium foils, while gamma rays can only be stopped by lead block, which means gamma rays can penetrate you, can even penetrate this wall and a lot of materials except a thick lead block. This is why they are stored inside lead block, because that is the only thing that can stop the rays. A body starts from rest and accelerates uniformly at 5 meters per second until it attains a velocity of 25 meters per second. Calculate the time taken to attain this velocity. Look at something. A body starts from rest. In physics or in motion, remember, motion is the change in position of a body with respect to time, and force is the reason for motion. We have two types of force, the contact force and the force field. The contact force requires contact between body. If I push this guy, this person's hand, it's a force, there is contact. If I put this person's hand to myself, there is a contact, it's a force. Friction is a contact force as well. But for non-contact force, gravitational force is a non-contact force. If I go up, I come down. So there is no contact between me and the force, but a force is acting on me. So that is force for you. And when you are told that a body starts from rest, it simply means the initial velocity is equal 0. So when you have a question, after reading the question and they say final velocity or they give you velocity, you don't know whether that velocity is initial velocity or final velocity. Or you write out a formula, v is equals u plus at, and you are given a velocity. You'll be wondering, is it initial or final? Which one should I use? So this is to clear your doubt. When they say a body starts from rest, it simply means the initial velocity is 0. Sometimes you'll be told that the body comes to rest or goes to rest. When a body goes to rest, final velocity is equals 0. When a body starts from rest, u is 0, goes to rest, v is equals 0. So from this question, we have that u is equals 0 and it accelerates uniformly at 5 meters per second square. So a is equals 5 meters per second square, or 5 meters per second square, until it attains a velocity of 25 meters per second. So you will agree with me that this is the final velocity, which is 25 meters per second. Calculate the time taken to attain this velocity. When you are given questions under motion, you simply bring out the equations of motion and check out the one that suits you. This is one of them. Another one is S is equals ut plus 1 over 2 at squared. Another one is v squared is equals u squared plus 2as. From here, we are given final velocity, we are given initial velocity, we are given acceleration, and we are looking for time. So this is suitable. We don't have distance, so we don't need these two. From v is equals u plus at, v is 25 meters per second, u is 0, plus a is 5, and t is what we are looking for. 25 is simply equals 5 times t, that is 5t. When you divide here by 5 and you divide here by 5, 5 divided by 5 is 1, which means we are left with 1t here. How about 25 divided by 5? It is 5. So time is simply 5 seconds. To get more of the class, I highly recommend that you check out the Flash Learners channel. You'll see all other topics, all other questions that you will find helpful. Everything is covered under physics and other subjects. Now let us end the class with this. In circuits, we have resistance, we have inductors, and we have capacitors. There's a circuit where you can have resistance, inductor, and capacitor together. It is referred to as RLC circuit. Before then, when arranging resistance, it can be arranged, or resistors rather, they can be arranged in series and in parallel. If you are given 2 ohms resistor and 5 ohms resistor in series, the equivalent resistance or the equivalent resistor or the total resistors is simply R1 plus R2. This is equals 2 ohms plus 5 ohms. In this case, 7 ohms. For series arrangement, for parallel arrangement, something like this, the equivalent resistance will simply be, let R1 be 2 ohms, R2 be 5 ohms. It will be 1 over ROT is equals 1 over R1 plus 1 over R2. This is simply 1 over ROT is equals 1 over, you can call this R1 2 plus, you can call this R2 1 over 5, or you call this R1 and call this R2. You arrive at the same answer. So here it will simply be 1 over ROT is equals 5 plus 2. So 1 over ROT is equals 7 over 10. So ROT will simply be 10 over 7. This is the equivalent resistance of resistors connected in parallel. Resistance, they offer opposition to the flow of current. Remember, V is equals IR. Voltage depends on current and resistance. Resistance arrangement or solving is opposite to that of capacitors. If you are given capacitor in series, let this be 2 microfarad and let this be 5 microfarad. Capacitors are used to store charge. The equivalent capacitor in series will add up like resistance in parallel or resistors in parallel. So here 1 over total capacitance will be 1 over 2 plus 1 over 5. Although it's in series, we are solving it like capacitors, like resistance in parallel. Then we have capacitors in parallel. The solution is like resistors in series. So the total capacitors will simply be two microfarad plus 5 microfarad. In RLC circuits, there is impedance. Impedance is the total opposition to the flow of current offered by resistors, inductors, and capacitors. In this case, to find the impedance or the opposition offered by this guy, it is simply the square root of R squared plus bracket SL minus SE squared. R squared is square of the resistance, SL is inductive reactance, and SC is capacitive reactance. Inductive reactance is the total opposition to flow of current offered by inductors. Capacitive reactance, opposition offered by the flow of capacitors. Now, when you have this formula for impedance, you will be given the resistors or the resistance, or you find the resistance yourself in series or in parallel. The inductance, the inductive reactance is simply 2 pi FL. If you are given the value of the inductor, which is L, and you are given the frequency, you can simply solve for inductive reactance. Capacitive reactance is 1 over 2 pi FC. So this is the value of the capacitor, this is frequency. When you get these two values and substitute here, you are getting impedance. I hope you found this class helpful. Feel free to let me know how you feel about it. Tell your friends about it and don't fail to subscribe.